A 3-month-old puppy walked straight up to a pregnant lioness and touched her stomach with his nose. What happened in the next 60 seconds should have ended in blood, but instead it started the most unusual maternal bond ever documented in the wild. This happened at a wildlife sanctuary in Botswana, and it changed everything researchers thought they knew about predator instincts during pregnancy. The conventional belief is absolute. Lionesses are most dangerous when they're pregnant or protecting cubs. Their maternal aggression peaks, their tolerance for threats disappears completely, and anything perceived as competition or danger gets eliminated without hesitation. A domestic dog approaching a pregnant lioness isn't just risky, it's suicide. Lions kill dogs. They don't befriend them. That's not cruelty, that's nature protecting the next generation. But on a March morning in 2024, a stray Labrador puppy named Scout wandered into an area of the Okavango Wildlife Sanctuary that should have been his final destination. The sanctuary manager, David Palmer, had been tracking a heavily pregnant lioness named Nala for weeks. She was 8 years old, in her prime, and this was her 4th litter. David knew her patterns, where she rested during the heat, which water sources she preferred, how aggressive she became when anything approached her territory. She'd charged vehicles, roared at elephants, even fought off a young male lion who got too close to her den site. Nala was not an animal you approached casually, especially not 3 weeks before she was due to give birth. Scout had arrived at the sanctuary under tragic circumstances. His mother and littermates had been killed by a vehicle collision near the sanctuary's perimeter. Local staff found him wandering the access road, dehydrated and crying. At 12 weeks old, he was old enough to walk, but too young to understand danger. David brought him to the sanctuary's veterinary facility, planning to rehabilitate him before finding a placement with a family in the nearest town. That's where the plan fell apart. Scout escaped his temporary enclosure. David discovered the breach within an hour and immediately began tracking the puppy. His heart sank when Scout's tiny paw prints led directly toward Nala's territory, a section of the preserve that was strictly off-limits due to her advanced pregnancy and heightened aggression. By the time David spotted Scout, the puppy was already 50 yards inside Nala's domain, and Nala had spotted him too. David watched through binoculars, his radio already keyed to call for backup, tranquilizer protocols ready. He'd seen lions kill before. It happens fast. 1 pounce, 1 bite to the neck, and it's over. He had maybe 30 seconds to decide whether to intervene or let nature take its brutal course. Nala rose from her resting spot beneath an acacia tree. Her belly was visibly distended with cubs, probably 3 or 4 based on her size. She moved toward Scout with the focused intensity of a predator sizing up prey. Her ears were forward, her eyes locked on the small yellow shape bouncing through the tall grass, completely oblivious to the apex predator stalking toward him. Scout saw her when the distance closed to 20 feet. A smarter dog would have run. An experienced dog would have shown submission. Scout did neither. He wagged his tail and walked directly toward her, making the soft whimpering sounds puppies make when they're seeking comfort. David's finger hovered over the tranquilizer authorization. One wrong move and he'd be documenting a puppy's death instead of Nala's pregnancy. Here's where everything everyone knows about lioness behavior should have kicked in. Nala should have killed Scout instantly. Pregnant lionesses don't tolerate intrusions. They don't show mercy to potential threats. Their hormones, their instincts, their evolutionary programming all point in one direction: eliminate the risk. Instead, Nala stopped moving. She lowered her head and sniffed the approaching puppy. Scout walked right up to her massive face, a face that could crush his skull with 1 bite, and licked her nose. Then he did something that made David's blood run cold. Scout walked to Nala's side and pressed his nose against her swollen belly. Nala should have killed him right then. Every instinct should have interpreted that touch as an attack on her unborn cubs. David was already calling for the tranquilizer team, certain he was about to witness a tragedy. But Nala just lay down. She shifted her position slightly, making room, and Scout curled up against her warm belly. The lioness began grooming the puppy with her rough tongue, the same way she'd groom her own cubs. Within minutes, both were asleep in the afternoon sun. David radioed off the tranquilizer team. Then he just watched, trying to process what he was seeing. Over the following 3 weeks, as Nala's pregnancy progressed, Scout never left her side. David set up observation posts to monitor them around the clock. The data they collected defied everything in the behavioral literature. Scout would rest his head on Nala's belly and feel the cubs moving inside. When she went to drink water, he followed. When she hunted, slower now, heavy with pregnancy, he waited in the tall grass where she left him. She brought him portions of her kills, small pieces of meat that he wasn't quite ready to digest but tried to eat anyway to please her. The sanctuary veterinarian, Dr. Rebecca Hunt, developed a theory. She'd been studying the hormonal changes in pregnant mammals for 2 decades. What if Scout had triggered something in Nala that overrode her predatory response? Pregnant mammals experience massive floods of oxytocin and prolactin, hormones associated with bonding and maternal behavior. Could a puppy's whimpering, his vulnerable approach, his obvious need for mothering have activated those circuits early? But here's the part that made David question everything. Nala gave birth to 4 cubs in early April. Healthy Lioness cubs born in a den she'd prepared weeks earlier, and Scout was there, curled beside her during the entire labor, licking the newborn cubs clean alongside their mother. For 6 weeks, Scout was raised as the 5th cub. He nursed from Nala. Even though he was technically weaned, she let him feed alongside her biological cubs. He played with them, learned to stalk grass like they did, slept in the puppy pile of lion cubs like he belonged there. David documented everything. The footage went viral. Millions of views of a yellow Labrador puppy play fighting with lion cubs, all under the watchful eye of their shared mother. Eventually, Scout had to be separated. At 4 months old, he was getting too rough for the younger cubs, and his play style was distinctly dog, not lion. David placed him with a conservation family who worked at the sanctuary where Scout lives today, a dog who spent his infancy convinced he was a lion. Nala's cubs are now adolescents, learning to hunt with their mother. She's preparing for another pregnancy cycle, her 4th successful litter proving her strength as a mother. David's contrarian insight changed sanctuary protocols. We've been so rigid about separating species that we've missed opportunities to understand the flexibility of maternal instinct. It's not that predator-prey boundaries don't exist, it's that under specific circumstances, with specific individuals, those boundaries can shift in ways we're only beginning to understand. A puppy touching a pregnant lioness's belly should have ended in tragedy. Instead, it revealed something profound about the power of maternal hormones to override millions of years of predatory evolution. If this story amazed you, hit that like button and subscribe for more incredible wildlife stories that prove nature is far stranger and more beautiful than we ever imagined.